to know that like you can't keep doing the same things.
He was 8 days from the Super Bowl when his father got arrested for a felony. He said nothing publicly. Then a year later, cameras caught him breaking his silence. And what came out of that conversation changed everything. The arrest. In the August 20th, 2025 episode of ESPN's Chiefs Kingdom, a 6-part documentary chronicling the Kansas City Chiefs franchise, Patrick Mahomes sat down and spoke on camera about something he had refused to discuss publicly for over a year: his father's arrest, what it did to him, and what he believed it finally did to his father.
I think just knowing that it hurt me woke him up to know that like you can't keep doing the same things.
His father, Pat Mahomes Sr., responded on camera in the same episode. He addressed what it felt like to watch his son answer questions about him at a Super Bowl press conference.
I called him, right after, and I told him, I said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that it's taken away from your time and focus. I made a vow that he would never have to deal with anything because of drinking, because of me.
Brittany Mahomes added in the same episode that the incident finally registered with Pat Sr. in a way nothing before it had, because his children and grandchildren were watching. Those 3 statements, Patrick's, Pat Sr.'s, and Brittany's, are the emotional spine of the entire story. But to understand why they landed the way they did, you have to understand what actually happened in February 2024 that made all of this necessary. On February 3rd, 2024, Pat Mahomes Sr. was pulled over on West Gentry Parkway in Tyler, Texas, at approximately 8:30 in the evening. Officers conducting the traffic stop found an open beer can in the vehicle. Sr. failed field sobriety tests on the scene. His blood alcohol content was tested and came back at 0.23, nearly 3 times the legal limit of 0.08. Because he had prior DWI convictions on record, this arrest was classified under Texas law as DWI third or more, a third-degree felony carrying a potential sentence of 2 to 10 years in state prison and up to a $10,000 fine. The date of that arrest, February 3rd, 2024. The date of Super Bowl, February 11th, 2024. 8 days between a felony arrest and the biggest game of Patrick Mahomes' career. The Kansas City Chiefs were chasing a 3rd consecutive Super Bowl title, something the modern NFL had never seen. Patrick Mahomes was the man at the center of that chase. 2 rings already, 28 years old. Every camera in sports media pointed directly at him. And then his father's mugshot hit the news cycle. Reporters put it in front of Patrick at Super Bowl press conferences before the game had even been played. He was there to talk about the 49ers. Instead, he was fielding questions about a felony. On February 6th, 2024, Patrick responded to Page 6. "It's a family matter, so I will just keep it to the family. That's all I really have to say at this point. Brief, controlled, a wall." He went on to win the Super Bowl 8 days later. The legal case moved on a separate timeline. Pat Sr. was indicted in April 2024. A jury trial was scheduled for August 27, 2024. On that exact date, the day trial was set to begin. He pleaded guilty to the felony charge in Judge Carrie L. Russell's Smith County courtroom. Formal sentencing came on September 23, 2024. 5 years of probation with intense first-year supervision, 160 hours of community service, a DWI repeat offender program, a life skills course, AA classes, and a no alcohol condition. A separate 10-day county jail term was added, which he served starting around October 21st, 2024. TMZ captured footage of him reporting to Smith County Jail to begin that sentence. A man who faced 2 to 10 years in prison walked out of court with probation and 10 days in county jail. That is the sentence. That is what Patrick reacted to. And that reaction, brief in public, raw on camera a year later, is what the rest of this story is built around. Patrick's real reaction and what it means. The most watched, most shared, most discussed version of Patrick Mahomes reacting to all of this did not come from a press conference, a statement to Page 6, or a social media post. It came from a camera in a private setting, inside a docu-series that Patrick agreed to participate in because of something Peyton Manning said to him. In his CBS Mornings interview, Patrick explained the thinking behind saying yes to that level of access.
We talked to Peyton about it for a while, and I wanted to, I asked him would he do it, and he kind of had said, maybe not at the beginning of my career, but I think what stuck with me is he said, at the end of my career, I wish I would have done it so my kids could have seen what I was doing every day.
That framing, documenting this chapter for his children, is what opened the door to the conversation about his father that Patrick had been keeping locked for over a year. He was not trying to make a statement about the DWI. He was trying to preserve a record of who he was during this period of his life. The arrest conversation came through because the cameras were there for everything, and the cameras captured what the press conferences never never did. The Chiefs Kingdom episode that aired on August 20th, 2025 on ESPN Plus contained the sit-down that became the most circulated clip from the entire saga. Patrick described the specific, grinding weight of the timing, the arrest landing 8 days before the Super Bowl, turning a deeply private family matter into a press conference topic that reporters lobbed at him between questions about the 49ers defense. That framing, "just knowing that it hurt me," is the line that separated this reaction from every legal commentary and privileged debate that surrounded the story. Patrick was not analyzing the sentencing as a policy outcome. He was not weighing in on whether probation was appropriate for a third offense felony. He was talking about it as a son who had to stand at a podium and answer questions about his father's drunk driving arrest while preparing to play in the Super Bowl. The wound was personal, not procedural. Pat Sr.'s response in the same episode carried the full weight of that realization. He described having Patrick answer questions about him in front of the entire sports world as the most embarrassing thing he had ever been through in his life. Not the arrest, not the jail, not the probation terms or the ankle monitor or the community service hours. The image of his son, mid-dynasty, mid-championship chase, mid-peak, standing at a podium with the entire sports media apparatus pointing at him, being asked about a felony. The docuseries also captured what the relationship actually looked like in practice. Pat Sr. present at games, in the stands at Arrowhead, part of the family's daily life, watching his son do what he had always done.
He really enjoys watching his son play football and live out his dream.
For him to be there and supporting me, that's really cool because those moments are moments that you won't ever get again, and he's been there for all of them these last year.
That is the full emotional picture of the story. Not a son cutting off a father, not a public condemnation, not a statement through a publicist, a son who said it hurt him, a father who heard that and called to apologize, and a family that kept showing up for each other in the stands and at the dinner table through all of it. Brittany's comment that the incident finally hit Pat Sr. because his children and grandchildren were watching added the generational dimension that no legal argument could reach. Sterling, Bronze, Golden, 3 children who will grow up seeing these clips, reading these timelines, understanding this chapter of their family's history through whatever lens they eventually bring to it. That is what Brittany identified as the thing that broke through where nothing else had. Not the court system, not the probation terms. The grandchildren watching from the suite at Arrowhead. The 2025 Chiefs season added its own painful chapter to Patrick's year. He tore his ACL and LCL in Week 15 against the Chargers, ending his season early. The team finished 6-11 and missed the playoffs for the first time in the Mahomes era. Surgery was successful. Rehab started immediately. At his January 2026 press conference, he was already focused entirely on the return.
Yeah, first off, rehab's going great so far, just hitting all the checkpoints that the doctor wants you to do. And obviously, I think the long term, I want to be ready for week 1. Our doctor said that I could be.
When asked about the mental side of a recovery that long and that demanding,
but for me, I think just having that goal in mind of trying to get better every day, that as well as having a great wife that is able to keep me involved with the kids. And
the consistency across every version of Patrick Mahomes under pressure, injury, family crisis, public scrutiny, press conference ambush, is the same disciplined, forward-facing response. Handle it privately, show up publicly, keep moving. Patrick's reaction, when it finally came in full, was not anger. It was not a verdict on the court's decision. It was a son saying simply, "Knowing it hurt me," was what finally woke him up. Whether it did, the next chapter of this story gives you the honest answer to that question. What happened in 2026? The story did not end with the sentencing. It restarted exactly 2 years after it began. The 5-year probation from September 2024 came with strict layered terms. No alcohol, intense supervision for the first year, AA attendance, community service completion, and a scram ankle monitor, a continuous alcohol monitoring device, required as a condition tied to travel permissions and ongoing oversight. The monitoring was not there from day one. It was added specifically because of compliance concerns that surfaced during the probation period itself. In February 2025, Pat Sr. missed a court-ordered urine test, taking it 1 day late on February 12th instead of the required February 11th, though he passed when he did submit. That same month, there was a reported altercation connected to a New Orleans trip that Pat Sr. had received court approval to attend during Super Bowl weekend. Documents later suggested that incident may have been staged as part of a boxing promotion involving former MLB pitcher John Rocker. But regardless of the staging question, a supervision officer and the district attorney responded to the sequence of events by requesting a scram ankle bracelet as an additional monitoring condition. The court granted it at Pat Sr.'s expense. So by the end of 2025, Pat Mahomes Sr. was on active felony probation, wearing a continuous alcohol monitoring device around his ankle at all times, under a supervision framework that had already flagged at least one missed test and one travel-adjacent incident. The apparatus around him had tightened considerably since September 2024. On January 1st, 2026, New Year's Day, the Scram ankle monitor reportedly detected a high alcohol reading, with some reports citing a transdermal alcohol content of approximately 0.045. A reading at that level on a device designed to detect alcohol through the skin is the kind of data point that triggers an automatic compliance flag in the probation system. The warrant process moved quickly. On February 3rd, 2026, exactly 2 years to the day after the original 2024 DWI traffic stop, Pat Mahomes Sr. was arrested during a scheduled probation meeting in Smith County and booked into Tyler's Smith County Jail. He remained in custody for approximately 35 days. District Attorney Jacob Putman confirmed publicly that the violation involved alleged alcohol consumption, which breached the no-drink conditions of his probation. The coincidence of the date, February 3rd, 2 years apart, was not lost on anyone covering the story. It gave the 2026 arrest a symmetry that made the narrative feel cyclical in the most uncomfortable way possible. Same county, same probation supervision structure, same man, 2 years later, almost to the hour, violating the terms of a felony probation in Texas, particularly one connected to a third offense DWI with documented prior convictions, carries serious exposure. Full revocation of probation and imposition of the original prison sentence range becomes a live possibility at that point. That means Pat Sr. walked into the March 9th revocation hearing with up to 10 years in state prison sitting on the table as a potential outcome. The hearing took place on March 9th, 2026, before the same Judge Kerry L. Russell in Smith County who had handled the original sentencing. What happened at that hearing is where the story took its second sharp turn. A hair follicle test conducted for the hearing came back completely clean. No evidence of long-term alcohol use. Pat Sr. did not admit to drinking. The Scram device had produced a reading flagging alcohol. The hair follicle test found nothing. Those two pieces of evidence sat in direct conflict with each other, and that conflict became the pivot point of the entire hearing. The district attorney's office filed a motion to withdraw the revocation request, not to dismiss the matter entirely, but to modify the existing probation terms instead of pursuing full revocation. Judge Russell approved the modification. Pat Sr.'s probation was extended by 2 years, bringing the total supervision period to 7 years. A mandatory 16-week outpatient treatment program was added as a new condition. He was credited with 30 days already served since his early February arrest, which covered the newly imposed 30-day jail component entirely, and he was released from custody that same day. He walked into that courtroom facing 10 years in prison. He walked out the same day with an extended probation and a treatment requirement. The internet's response was immediate, and it carried the exact same energy as 2024. Celebrity justice again. How many chances? The Scram monitor reading versus the clean hair follicle test became its own debate. Critics questioned whether the conflicting results reflected a technology malfunction, or whether they reflected the influence of a high-profile attorney and the gravitational pull of a famous son's last name. Some experts have noted that Scram monitors can occasionally produce false positives, particularly from exposure to non-consumable alcohol sources like hand sanitizer or certain cleaning products. Defenders of the outcome argued the evidence simply did not clear the threshold required for full revocation, no admission, no confirmed long-term use in the hair test, and that a treatment mandate addresses the underlying addiction more directly than sending a 55-year-old man to state prison for a decade would. The debate did not resolve. It just reset, exactly the way it had after the 2024 sentencing. Patrick Mahomes issued no public statement in response to the March 9th hearing. As of March 10th, 2026, the day after the ruling, his consistent position remained unchanged. No press conference remarks, no social media. The wall stayed up, and that silence, by this point in the story, had become its own kind of statement. As of March 10th, 2026, Pat Sr. remains on extended probation, 7 years total from the original 2024 sentencing, with a 16-week outpatient treatment program as a new active condition and an ankle monitor that was likely continued or adjusted after the March 9th hearing. No further incidents have been reported since his release on March 9th. The history no one could ignore. The 2024 arrest did not come out of nowhere. It was the visible peak of a pattern that had been building quietly for years, one that only became national news because of how famous Patrick Mahomes had become. Pat Mahomes Sr. had at least 2 prior DWI-related convictions on his record before 2024, with court documents and reporting referencing incidents going back to approximately 2008. A 2008 DWI in South Dakota surfaced in later media compilations. A 2016 public intoxication charge was recorded, notably at one of Patrick's college football games at Texas Tech. At the time, it barely made noise. Patrick was not yet a household name. The most formally documented pre-2024 case was a 2018 DWI arrest in Smith County, Texas, which resulted in a guilty plea and a 40-day jail sentence served on weekends, running from approximately February 2019 through February 2020. That made it a second offense at the time. Standard sentencing under Texas law for a non-injury DWI, light consequences, and he moved on. That is the part that matters most when tracing how this escalated. Each time, the outcome was manageable. Serve the weekends, take the classes, walk out. For someone dealing with a deepening alcohol problem, that cycle, offense, consequence, release, repeat, did not force a reckoning. It allowed the pattern to continue. When prosecutors charged the February 2024 arrest, they explicitly cited the prior convictions as the reason it escalated to a third-degree felony, the most serious classification his conduct had reached. The legal system had officially run out of room to treat this as a minor issue. Now, Pat Sr. himself later reflected on where all of this started. In the ESPN docuseries Chief's Kingdom, he addressed how alcohol had been woven into his professional life from the beginning. His own words in the docuseries were that, "I never really thought alcohol was a problem for me. It was just something that I've always done, just something that's in the game." That quote is a direct product of Pat Sr.'s 11-year MLB career. He pitched for 6 franchises: the Minnesota Twins, Boston Red Sox, New York Mets, Texas Rangers, Chicago Cubs, and Pittsburgh Pirates from 1992 to 2003, with a stint in Japan for the Yokohama Bay Stars, sandwiched in between. The clubhouse culture of the 1990s and early 2000s in professional baseball was one where heavy drinking after games was normalized, expected, and rarely examined. Pat Sr. spent over a decade inside that environment at the most formative years of his adult life. When he retired and moved back to Tyler, Texas, the habit came with him, but without the structure of a season schedule around it, and without the daily accountability of a roster spot to protect. He compiled a career record of 42 wins and 39 losses, a 5.47 ERA, and 452 strikeouts across 709 innings and 308 appearances. He was a journeyman. He bounced. He adapted. He stayed in the game until his late 30s, grinding through independent leagues and minor league stops long after his MLB time ended. That kind of career, constant travel, constant uncertainty, constant clubhouse culture, built a certain relationship with alcohol that Pat Sr. later admitted he never properly examined until it was too late. Patrick later tied this specific dynamic to his father's pattern in the Chief's Kingdom episode. He noted that his father underestimated alcohol's hold on him because he could always still be on the baseball field, meaning it never visibly cost him his career, so the problem never felt like a problem. The damage was internal and slow. The consequences, when they came legally, were light enough each time that no single moment forced a full stop. This is also the full family context around the 2024 arrest. Patrick's brother Jackson Mahomes faced his own separate legal proceedings, running almost simultaneously. Aggravated sexual battery charges were filed against Jackson in 2023, stemming from an incident at a restaurant in February of that year. Those charges were ultimately reduced to a misdemeanor battery plea in March 2024, with 6 months of probation that included mandatory alcohol and drug treatment conditions. That case was entirely separate from Pat Sr.'s DWI situation, but in the public conversation, the two timelines became a combined narrative, one about the Mahomes family name and what was happening around it while Patrick was winning Super Bowls. Patrick handled his brother's situation in front of cameras with the exact same language he used for his father.
Honestly, it's kind of the personal thing that I just kind of going to keep to myself. At the end of the day, I come here to play football and try to take care of my family at the same time.
The wall went up the same way every time, but what the Chief's Kingdom docuseries eventually revealed was that behind that wall, The weight of all of it, the father's arrests, the brother's case, the press conference questions, the public scrutiny on every person connected to his name had been accumulating in Patrick in ways that the brief public statements never showed. The background, years of repeat offenses, a culture that normalized the behavior, a family name under a microscope that only grew bigger with every championship, was what made the sentence that followed feel so charged to so many people watching. And the reaction, when it finally arrived in full, was built on all of that history beneath the surface. Why they called it insane. The sentence itself is the engine of this story. Everything else, the family history, the timing, Patrick's controlled silence, feeds into the reaction that one word triggered: probation. Pat Mahomes Sr. faced a third-degree felony charge under Texas law. The range of punishment for that classification is 2 to 10 years in state prison, plus a fine of up to $10,000. He had a documented history of prior DWI convictions. His blood alcohol content at the time of the arrest was 0.23, nearly 3 times the legal limit. There was an open beer can visible in the vehicle before any testing even began. On September 23, 2024, he was sentenced to 5 years of probation with intense supervision for the first year, 160 hours of community service, a DWI repeat offender program, a life skills course, AA classes, and a no alcohol condition. A separate 10-day county jail sentence was added, which he served in late October 2024. No prison time, no years behind bars, a deal built around a guilty plea, community programs, and monitoring. The public reaction was immediate and loud. Social media platforms lit up with commentary focused on one specific angle: that Pat Mahomes Sr. received this outcome because of who his son is. The phrase that spread most widely across fan posts and comment sections was direct and cutting. The entitlement is crazy. A TMZ video from the original 2024 traffic stop reportedly showed Pat Sr. invoking Patrick's name during the encounter with officers, an attempt, fans argued, to use his son's fame as leverage in a law enforcement situation. That moment became the focal point of the entitlement narrative that ran through the entire story. It gave the outrage a specific image to attach itself to. Not just a light sentence, but a man actively reaching for his son's name as a shield in the moment the handcuffs were about to come out. Comments circulating in the days after he began his 10-day jail stint captured the temperature online precisely. That family is something else. The entitlement is unreal. And it's bad when your father and brother bring shame to your brand and name. And the one that recurred most consistently across platforms: poor Patrick. It isn't his fault his dad is a POS. That last sentiment points to the central split that defined the public reaction. On one side sat people who believed the sentence was the direct product of celebrity proximity, that a non-famous man carrying the same record, the same BAC reading, the same open beer can, the same third offense felony charge would have been sentenced to prison without a second thought. On the other side stood people who argued that Texas deferred adjudication for non-injury felony DWIs follows established legal norms, that a plea deal routinely produces outcomes like this, regardless of the defendant's last name, that real consequences were imposed in the form of monitoring, mandatory programs, community service, and jail time, and that attaching Patrick's fame to the outcome assumed a corruption that was never actually proven. Attorney Joe Murphy, who represented Pat Sr., pointed to the 6-month sober claim and Pat Sr.'s stated remorse as factors that supported the plea arrangement. The defense built its case around rehabilitation rather than punishment, a framing that works in Texas courts for first-time felony plea deals, but drew sharp skepticism from the public given that this was a third offense, not a first. The timing added another combustible layer to the public reaction. Around August 2024, in the weeks before the 10-day jail stint, Pat Sr. had posted on Instagram celebrating 6 months of sobriety and expressing gratitude to his family. He then reported to county jail weeks later. The sequence landed exactly as critics predicted it would. The sobriety post was mocked as performative, a piece of image management that the TMZ jail check-in footage immediately undercut. The optics produced a story arc that wrote itself: announce sobriety, report to jail, walk out 10 days later. And then, sitting beneath all of the public outrage and privilege debate and entitlement commentary, was the question that the Chiefs Kingdom episode answered in a way no legal brief ever could. What did it actually do to Patrick? The answer was not complicated. It hurt him, and his father knowing that, hearing it, feeling it, carrying it, was the thing that Pat Sr. later described as the most significant consequence of everything that happened. Not the jail, not the probation, not the monitor on his ankle, the phone call he had to make to his son after watching him answer questions about a DWI arrest on the biggest stage in professional sports. That gap between the legal sentence the public called insane and the private sentence the family lived through is what made the Chiefs' Kingdom clips spread the way they did. People came for the reaction to the courtroom outcome. What they found was a father and son accounting for something much older and much heavier than a single traffic stop on West Gentry Parkway. The insane sentence was always two things at the same time. It was a legal outcome that millions of people looked at and called too light. And it was the family sentence that ran beneath the legal one the entire time. Years of a private struggle becoming a public story. A son answering for a father at the most watched sporting event in the world. A grandfather making a vow on camera to 3 grandchildren who were already watching from the suite. Whether that vow held, the 2026 arrest gives you the honest answer.